Hi everyone, in this video we're going to talk about responsible analytics practices, a crucial part of working with data today. We'll focus on three main areas: data privacy laws, responsible data handling, and recognizing and avoiding bias in data analytics. Let's begin with a simple question. What is data privacy? Data privacy, also called information privacy, is a part of data security that deals with how data is collected, used, shared, and stored. It focuses especially on personal or sensitive data, things like your name, health information, financial records, or even your browsing history. Anytime we collect or work with such data, say through online forms, customer surveys, medical records, or employee files, privacy protections must be in place. Why data privacy? Because it protects individuals' rights and freedoms. It builds trust. When people know their information is safe, they're more willing to share it. It prevents serious risks like identity theft, fraud, or discrimination. It keeps us compliant with laws like GDPR, HIPAA, and FERPA, and it supports ethical decision-making in fields like research, education, and marketing. Data privacy concerns are typically about three things: how data is legally collected and stored, whether it's shared with third parties, and whether it meets legal and ethical standards. The three big principles here are confidentiality, keep sensitive information private, especially when it's medical or financial; transparency, let people know how their data is used and what risks may exist; accountability, organizations must protect data, avoid misuse, and respond responsibly when things go wrong. Because of repeated cases of data breaches and misuse, many laws now exist to protect data privacy. These laws regulate how data is collected, used, and stored, and they require companies to put security safeguards in place. Let's go over some major laws, starting with GDPR. The General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, is the gold standard of privacy laws. It's used across the European Union and came into effect in 2018. Some of its key principles include: 1. Collect data lawfully, fairly, and transparently. 2. Use it only for the specific purpose it was collected. 3. Don't collect more than needed. 4. Keep data accurate and secure. And 5. Give people control, like accessing, correcting, or even deleting their own data. Here's an example. Say a US-based website is visited by people from the European Union. Under GDPR, the site must display a cookie consent banner, allow users to opt in, and honor requests to delete their personal data. Next is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, US, or FERPA, a US law that protects students' educational records. It gives students and parents the right to access their education records, request corrections, and decide who gets to see that information. Schools must have written permission before sharing personal information. A good example is a professor cannot post grades publicly or email them to the whole class. Instead, grades must be shared securely and privately. HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, US, is all about protecting health data. It applies to hospitals, clinics, insurers, anyone handling personal health information, or PHI. HIPAA requires things like secure systems and encrypted emails, limited access to records, and letting patients access their own medical data. For example, a hospital can't share your lab results with anyone, even your family, without your permission. Institutional Review Board, US, abbreviated as IRBs, exist to review research involving people, like surveys or experiments. Before data collection begins, the IRB must approve the research plan to make sure it's ethical, safe, and respects privacy. This means participants must give informed consent, their data must be secure, and any risks must be clearly communicated. For instance, if a university researcher wants to study mental health through surveys, they can't just start, they must go through IRB first. Now let's talk about credit card data. PCI DSS, short for Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, is a global standard that applies to anyone processing payment card information. Key requirements include encrypting cardholder data, using firewalls and antivirus tools, never storing CVV numbers, and limiting access to only those who need it. For example, an online store must protect payment information with encryption. If it fails to comply and gets hacked, it can be fined or even lose its ability to accept credit cards. To truly protect data privacy, responsible handling is key. That includes encrypting sensitive data, limiting access, storing data securely, and anonymizing small data sets to prevent individuals from being identified. Let's take a closer look at these practices. PII refers to personally identifiable information, includes anything that can directly or indirectly identify someone, like names, addresses, emails, ID numbers, or even a combination of demographic information. Here's how to handle PII responsibly. 1. Limit collection. Only gather what's necessary. 2. Restrict access. Only allow authorized users. 3. Avoid long-term storage unless you truly need it. 4. Anonymize. Replace names with labels like participant or row 1. This keeps your data safer and reduces legal risk. Securing data means protecting it from loss, leaks, or misuse. There are several key strategies. Encrypt files both during storage and transfer. Use strong passwords and two-factor authentication. Make regular backups. Keep logs of who accessed or changed data. For example, in a student project, don't email sensitive data. Instead, store it in a password-protected, encrypted folder. Even if names are removed, people can sometimes be re-identified, especially in small datasets. To prevent this, aggregate or group data, for example, show age ranges, not exact ages. Suppress or blur unique combinations that could reveal identity. Use k-anonymity to ensure each record is indistinguishable from at least k-1 others on key attributes. For example, if your dataset has only 2 students over age 60 in one major, their identity could be guessed, even without names. This protects against identity theft, stigma, and even legal issues. Just remember, anonymizing data is more than just removing names. Sometimes there's a trade-off, say protecting privacy, like grouping or masking data makes your analysis less precise. If we protect privacy too much, we might lose detail and accuracy. But if we show too much detail, we risk violating privacy. So we need to strike a balance. For example, you might round incomes to the nearest $10,000 instead of showing exact amounts. That protects privacy while still giving meaningful insights. Another issue to address in responsible analytics is overgeneralization, drawing big conclusions from small data sets. Why is this a problem? Small samples aren't representative. They show more random variation, and they can easily be biased. For example, surveying 10 people and saying 90% love our product doesn't mean much. Use larger, well-selected samples when making general claims. Bias is anything that skews or distorts the truth in your data. It can show up in how data is collected, analyzed, or even presented, and it often happens without us realizing it. There are 4 major types: confirmation bias, cognitive bias, motivational bias, and sampling bias. Let's walk through each one. Confirmation bias is when we focus on evidence that supports what we already believe and ignore or dismiss the rest. For example, a manager believes older customers are less likely to use mobile apps. When looking at the data, they only focus on evidence that supports that idea, ignoring segments where older users are actually engaged. To avoid the confirmation bias, we should ask neutral, open-ended research questions, test alternative explanations, use blind analysis, means not knowing group identities while analyzing, and invite peer review or oppose perspectives. Cognitive bias is defined as mental shortcuts or distortions that affect how we perceive and interpret data. often without realizing it. 3 common cognitive bias include anchoring, which means relying too heavily on the first piece of information seen. Availability bias refers to giving more weight to recent or memorable events, and framing effect meaning drawing different conclusions depending on how the data is presented. For example, if a chart says sales dropped 20%, it sounds negative. But if it says sales retained 80%, it sounds more positive, even if it's the same data. To avoid these biases, present data in multiple ways. Be careful with how you frame your message and check your assumptions through peer feedback or statistical tests. Motivational bias happens when personal interests, incentives, or beliefs, whether intentional or not, affect how we collect, interpret, or report data. It often shows up when surveys or experiments are designed to support a desired business goal. Unfavorable results are downplayed or hidden, or findings are presented in a way that pleases stakeholders or justifies funding. A company studying customer satisfaction may only survey loyal customers or leave out low ratings before presenting results to investors. The result looks good, but it's misleading. To avoid the motivational bias, commit to ethical reporting. Share results honestly, even if they aren't what you expected. Pre-register your analysis plan, write down what you'll test before you start, and use third-party reviewers or blind evaluations to keep interpretations objective. Sampling bias happens when your sample doesn't reflect the full population, leading to skewed or misleading results. It often comes from convenience sampling, like only surveying college students because they're easy to reach, missing key groups such as minorities or people in rural areas, self-selection, where only enthusiastic or upset people choose to respond, like in online reviews. For example, if you survey only urban users about internet speed, your results won't reflect the experience of rural users, even though they're part of the population too. To avoid sampling bias, use random sampling when possible. Stratify by important factors like age, region, or gender, and always acknowledge your sample's limitations to keep your analysis honest and credible. Responsible analytics isn't just about math, it's about protecting people, building trust, and making ethical decisions. By following privacy laws, handling data carefully, and avoiding bias, we can use analytics for good while respecting the rights and dignity of everyone involved.